Good afternoon, Frank. I'm Noah, and obviously you know me, but this is the Everyman BJJ podcast. Last weekend I had some stuff going on, so I had to take care of my business, and so we couldn't catch up. But now it's like after it feels like 2 weeks or more. We must. I know we both of us kind of probably feel full of ideas and stuff to talk about. But I think before we came on, we had a quick round robin on what we want to talk about. So with all that said, how are you doing, and what's on your mind?
Well, first of all, Noah, thanks for the intro, and it's good. It's always good to see you. You've been so busy these days. I've been busy, so I miss talking to you. And I know that you're hard at work and working on some great things that are actually going to help us with this podcast. So to elevate it and build it. So it's always good to meet with you. And I actually get so used to this. This is such a habit now, this podcast, that when we don't do it, you kind of miss it, and you can feel that we didn't do it. And now we're going to double up. We're doing one today. Today happens to be Friday. We're doing another one Sunday. So for everybody out there, we don't like to miss. We like to keep our word, be precise with your word, and the 4 agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz. But we are going to make this up. We're double dutying this week on the podcast. So it's good to be with you, Noah. Let's jump right in. First of all, shout out to the U.S. Air Force. Love this shirt. Love these colors. These are like Forza colors, like my brand colors. But very appreciative. I've got some friends in the Air Force, so just shout out to the Air Force and all of the the military personnel out there that do an outstanding job and risk their lives and keep us the country that we've been. Let's dive in, Noah. I was talking now in the last 2 months. So I took 13 or 14 months off of training. No wrestling, no jiu-jitsu. I did a lot of shadow boxing, still worked out. That was the longest gap of my life. I mean, I started wrestling when I was 14 years old. So we're talking almost 35 years. It's a long time. It's a lot of tread, a lot of grinding on the body. Very fortunate. Took 14 months off. COVID 2020 had a lot to do with that. Closed gyms, etc. I was in Utah. So it's been a kid in a candy store. It's been a kid on Christmas morning to me to be on those mats now at this advanced stage of my life with all the injuries. To be back has been amazing. And I document. So I have a notepad here, and I put a lot of things in this pad. I always got pen and paper. And this week, I think I've got like 92, 93 minutes of rolling. Most of those rolls are intermediate, some hard rolling. But I want to talk about, for people out there, especially people that get to be 35 years old, 40 years old, 45 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old, and still training on the mat. I want to talk about that because that's where I am right now. That's what's fresh in my mind. And so for me, things have changed. When I was younger and I stepped on the mats, I wasn't thinking about injury at all. Injury was not in my consciousness. I was just thinking about domination. I was just thinking about winning. I was just thinking about being better than my opponent, being better than my training partner. That was all I was thinking about. It was just very primal for me. Just go out there and win. Now when I step on the mat, there's a symphony of emotions. There's the gratitude, gosh, I can still do this. This means so much. It means even more to me now. My body still works well enough to be out there. I appreciate the camaraderie more. But there's also, I am thinking about injury prevention a lot. And I've always thought about it in the last 10 years, but now even more so because this, Noah, you're a professional. You've got a family. You've got you've got to make money to support yourself, to support your family, to build out the things you want to build. And the last thing I can afford right now is a serious injury or, heaven forbid, a surgery. So, I don't want to be at home when I'm supposed to be working and trying to make money and trying to build a brand and working with clients. I don't want to be there thinking about, oh, my injury. Oh, I need to ice it. Oh, I need an Epsom salt bath. I wonder how bad it is. That's what happens when you get injured. So I'm very mindful of injury prevention, injury mitigation. Now, the downside, so when I go and roll now, Noah, what I tend to do is I do pick more of my roles. Robert Drysdale, I train a lot at Drysdale Jiu Jitsu, the gentleman who get, the legend who gave my black belt, who we've had on this podcast a couple times, and he's welcome back anytime. But so I'm training with Drysdale. Rob, because we go far back, he knows that I'm, that I'm a hard worker. But he's like, hey, you tell me who you want to train with. I don't want to get you hurt. So he lets me pick my roles. There's still some really good people in the room. I train at 10th Planet on Sundays with Casey, over there, Coach Casey, and just so many good people in that open mat scenario there. And there's just so much talent in there. Coach Casey, of course, lets me and lets all of us pick our roles. But I've got to be more careful now, right? So what I was talking about is when you tend to be more careful, you tend to do things a little more deliberately, a little slower. You tend to flow more, even though my training partners are usually they're going, 80, 90, 100%. So they're still bringing it. And I'm more in control because I don't want to do something stupid. But at the same time, I'm trying to win. And what I've noticed in the recent sessions is I've been missing opportunities on the mat to finish my opponent, to finish my training partners. And what do I mean? I mean, sometimes when you're too flowy, when you're too deliberate, when you're moving too slow, when the choke is there, for instance, you get one little glimpse at your opponent or your training partner's back, and you miss the choke. So a lot, just like in boxing, in UFC, in jiu-jitsu, in wrestling, timing is a big deal. And a lot of people out there will tell you good timing beats speed. So you see somebody who's super fast. Oh my God, they're so fast. How are we going to stop them? Well, we've seen a lot of things. Vernon Forrest stands out. Vernon Forrest beat Shane Mosley. The late Vernon Forrest got shot and killed over some silliness. I think it was in Georgia. God rest his soul. But Vernon Forrest was a lot slower than Shane Mosley. And Shane Mosley was like #1 pound for pound boxer in the world at the time. And Vernon Forrest beat him. We talk a lot about the jab here, Noah. Stiff jab, great timing, dominated both fights with Shane Mosley. So timing is huge. And timing is an antidote. It's a kryptonite to speed. And so what I've noticed in my training sessions recently is, man, when you get older, Noah, so I want to say this to the older jiu-jitsu athletes out there, any athlete in any sport, when you get older, one of the most important things on the mat is efficiency, is economy of motion. You don't have energy to waste. When I was 20 and I had the best cardio in the room and I had the highest motor and I was the Energizer Bunny, I could just be relentless and I could make mistakes, and my grit and my high energy and my cardio would bail me out, and my scramble ability would bail me out. At our age, as we get older, there's only so much energy to go around. So you got to be really efficient. And so opportunities become, you might not get as many opportunities because you're moving slower. So when they come, I always talk about this in my jiu-jitsu. I talk about this on this podcast, and I want to pound it again. Seize opportunities because you don't know when they're coming again. Good opportunities, the right moment, the right time does not grow on trees. It doesn't. You might only you're rolling with a good training partner. They might only make one big mistake the whole 5 or 10 minutes you roll with them. You got to make them pay for that. You got to learn to be efficient and make them pay for that. And if you don't, then you're wasting opportunities, and you're being inefficient, and your game is going to suffer. So a lot of times when you're training, it's not always you have to be bigger, faster, stronger. It's that you have to realize when the right timing is. You have to understand timing. And when you see the right time, boom, you got to be like a shark out of water. You got to know when to go. You got to know when to coast, when to flow. You got to know when to go. When you see that moment for that choke, for that armbar, for that whatever, you don't hesitate. Go get it. Go take it. And I've been seeing that and paying attention to that in the last week. And it's something that, like, I'm going to go train tonight, and I'm going to be like, okay, Frank, you've been visualizing, you've been going over in your head, you've been seeing that moment. A lot of times with even the rear naked chokes, go for the choke before you have both hooks. Don't wait to have both hooks. As soon as you get a look at the neck, Marcelo Garcia style, take the neck. You worry about the hooks later. Because if you worry about the hooks, when you get the hooks, what's your opponent going to do? They're going to defend their neck like their life depends on it, and they're going to block you, and the moment is gone. When you see the neck, go. If you see the arm, go. You can worry about fixing your technique and all that later, but learn to capitalize, learn to seize opportunities rather than sitting back and coasting too much. So that's something at the front of my mind. Noah, your thoughts?
I'm listening to you say about seeing, and recognition, identification. So there's a step before this, and we're pattern seeking. Humans are pattern seeking. That's how our brains operate. We're looking for patterns. So the half step before that is recognizing, so there's a bit of like intuition. You call it intuition, but it's actually your mind racing through to see that opportunity. And what's hard is to put into action immediately, split second of recognize the pattern recognition, which then informs execution of movement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something you have to drill in. It's like where you see, where you recognize, or you feel, you can sense into it. I could use some more verbs to describe this, but it's this pattern recognition. And whenever you're saying these things, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I need to make a micro regulation with myself of watching more video that puts where I practice visualizing, putting myself in playing offensive, whereas I know that what you're describing sounds more defensive, but being in an offensive posture, rolling with someone, and trying to see my opportunities quicker, because that's I think the challenge is recognizing the pattern quicker and then responding, not just responding but reacting to that. So it goes for that. And when I do my handgun training and weapons training, what all my coaches have taught me to do is you do one movement with your hands. Let's say you have a weapon in your holster. Is recognize. Your hands go here. Your hands go here. You go as a base. This is your baseline. You put your hands out in front of your chest to block yourself. Recognize, and from there, I would come over. And if you're wearing a loose sleeve shirt, or an open shirt, button down shirt, where you have where it's where you're not imprinting your holster, reaching down with your dominant hand, which for me, I'm right-handed, recognize. And as soon as I recognize the threat, then I go into my motion of, and that drill that I know in my mind is so deeply ingrained from hundreds of hours on the shooting range of boom, recognize, and then going back, drawing, and then bringing out my sidearm. But I'm saying that pattern recognition is you have to see the threat, see the opportunity, and seize upon the opportunity. So I guess what we need to do is I'm walking back in time to where you're saying of that, recognizing that, but recognizing and you're saying the shorten the time, the time distance between that and reacting. So that takes break that down for me. What does that mean? How can I better see the opportunity? How can I develop those patterns?
You're right. So you have let me turn this. Somebody's got their AC unit on.
Okay, I don't hear anything. You're fine. You're perfectly fine.
Let me just.
Oh, now I hear it more. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that, peoples. Okay, so in terms of, that's a great point, and it's something that I'm taking for granted because I've been doing this so long that in order for, obviously I'm recognizing
Yeah.
these opportunities, but I'm failing to secure the choke and finish my opponent. And so this made me think of something. So I think it was at, Flow Grappling had another event, Who's Number One, and Mikey Musumeci made his no-gi debut. And in the lead up to that, first of all, they were like, Flow Grappling likes to stir the pot, and they sort of, part of their funding comes from the, WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment. So they kind of like some of that shtick and some of the outlandish stuff and the hype. And so they were like, how good is Mikey going to be in the no-gi, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, this is just preposterous. I mean, I've rolled with Mikey no-gi. Mikey Musumeci is a problem. Gi, no-gi, however you want to do it. I mean, he's that guy buzzed through my guard, no-gi, like nobody ever has before at any weight. Nobody at any weight. I've rolled with some big boys. I've rolled with some of the best that outweighed me by 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 pounds. No one's ever buzzed through my guard like Mikey Musumeci no-gi. So it was just preposterous. Like, they were trying to hype up his debut. And, Mikey's like a 4-time world champion. He's won the no-gi black belts a 4-time black belt world champion. I think he's won the no-gis twice, I think. So, I mean, just preposterous. But anyway, Mikey goes there, faces a good black belt, but somebody that's just not in the league or the stratosphere of Mikey. Very few are. So I heard Mikey on a breakdown. Mikey was breaking down his submission. I believe he won via triangle choke. So Mikey was like in the half guard and was baiting his opponent, Marcelo. He was baiting Marcelo to turn a certain way. And when he turned a certain way, he was going to try a canto choke. So a lot of people might not be familiar with the canto choke, but anyway, Mikey wanted this choke, and he wanted it because it's not something you see every day in the no-gi realm. I mean, it's an easier choke to pull off, much easier to pull off in the gi, but it's not something, it's something rare. So it would be, in terms of highlight reel footage, it'd be like, wow, people would be like, wow, you can do that. People would watch it and see it and be amused by it. And then probably on the following Monday, a lot of different academies around the world, people would be training it, right? Because they go, wow, you can do that. So Mikey wanted it. The only problem was his opponent did not cooperate and didn't take the bait. His opponent stayed flat. So normally when you're on the verge of being mounted, right? So Mikey had not mounted him, but Mikey easily could have mounted. But Mikey intentionally kept his foot in the half guard, didn't want to mount him, but kept him. But he wanted the guy, he gave his opponent room to move. Like, please turn, please steer. And then when you turn a little, I'm going to hit you with this choke. Well, his opponent preferred to stay flat, which most won't. It's like, I feel safer here flat. I'd rather just go ahead and mount me, right? So his opponent didn't cooperate. But the point there is that as Mikey was doing the breakdown, when it comes to pattern recognition or the awareness that you're talking about, right? Before the opportunity is there, the moment, the steps before the opportunity is available, a lot of the opportunity is when your opponent sits up or when your opponent turns this direction or turns that direction. And so that's what experience does. That's what expertise does in this sport. It's a lot of the opportunities are when people are moving, when they're on the bottom and they go to get up, when they're on the bottom and they attempt to sweep, when they're on the bottom and they go to 50-50 dogfight, when they're about to get mounted and then they turn away. That's where a lot of your opportunities are. So you've really got to start paying attention whenever there's a big movement or there's a shift or there's an explosion. Your opponent's on the bottom. So you've got to pay attention to that. What are they doing? Which way are they turning? You've got to already know that. You've got to already have a mentally map that out of, well, they're either going to turn this way, this way, this way. The best in the world don't wait to see if you're going to turn this way, that way, or the other way. They don't want you to have three. They bait you or they smother you to the point where you take the door that they want. They choose which direction you're going to roll in. They choose it for you. You may know that they're choosing it for you, or you may not know. You may just think, well, okay. But so they already know, they've closed the other doors and they already know you've got to roll this way. And then, of course, as soon as you roll that way, boom, they've got the timing. They pounce. They transition to the triangle, to the armbar, to the choke, whatever. And so a lot of the recognition is, again, a lot of the opportunities are, there's so many opportunities, Noah, with when you're about to pass someone's guard. That is one of the most fruitful opportunities. That's why it is important. Now, the leg lock game has changed passing the guard. You know, passing the guard used to be like the holy grail, like this huge thing in Jiu Jitsu. With no-gi submission grappling, it's not as big of a deal because the leg locks and the heel hooks and the knee bars have changed the game. You don't even have to pass someone's guard with no gi to be fantastic. It's not a requisite. It's not a requirement. In the gi, for a long time, it was imperative because a lot of your opportunities were correlated with when you try to pass their guard. When you threaten to pass their guard, then they tend to turn this way, that way, that way, and then their opportunities crop up. But even with no gi, you know, eventually more and more people are going to learn how to defend the heel hooks, the knee bars. That will come. There will be, people will learn to better defend it. They'll teach better defenses, and it will go back. There will still be a high premium on, can you pass the guard? We're not there right now. You don't have to pass the guard right now. But things are ebb and flow, and there are trends and fads and whatever. I'm not saying heel hooks are going anywhere. I'm not saying knee bars. They're here to stay. They can work spectacularly. There are always going to be people that do them fantastically. But a lot more people are going to be training them. The defenses are going to get way better. And then eventually people are going to have to balance their game and round their game with a lot of other submissions if they want to excel at no gi in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because people will adapt. We see that. So, but when you're trying to pass someone's guard, for instance, is a moment, there are tremendous opportunities there. That's why it's very important to have that as part of your repertoire, especially if you're in the gi. You want to be trying to pass the guard. How are they twisting? How are they turning? What are they doing with your legs? That pattern recognition that you're talking about. That's why it's good to threaten to pass someone's guard. If you're not good, especially in the gi, if you're not good at trying to threaten passing the guard, you're probably not going to get as many opportunities. Yes, there are the occasional people like Kron Gracie or Daniel Beleza. Those guys are phenomenal close guard players, right? They can play from the bottom and they're just phenomenal. But for most people, a lot of their opportunities, for most of them, they're going to come from a sweep and then trying to pass the guard, and then the person turns and you take their back, or you throw a front choke on them, whatever. So when you talk about pattern recognition, that's one thing I would recommend. Try to get better at passing the guard and trying to make your opponent turn. And even if you're not great at passing, even when you do pass the guard, okay. Now a lot of times you're trying to bait them into which way you want them to turn. Even when you do pass the guard, it's like, which way are they going to turn? Every time they turn or do something, there's opportunity for them as well as you. There's always opportunity even when you pass their guard to submit them, to advance your position. You've got to train yourself to see it.
Thank you. Yeah, that seems very reasonable. You know, whereas you just have to build your library mentally and train it, drill it. I know I'll be, from this discussion and the last discussion we had, we're training a lot of guard passing, because that just seems like the eternal thing. You got to be able to be a diamond in the, just be a diamond at passing guard.
Yeah,
so,
study some Leo Vera, study Leandro Lowe, even, I guess, Adolfo Fierro. I think Rafael Lovato's got some great guard passes. Marcelo Garcia had some great good, and there are a lot I'm missing. Lucas Lepri's got some phenomenal guard passing stuff out there. And there's many, many, many others. There's many others. I mean, Rafael Mendez, there's many others, but I'm not saying that's the only way, especially if you're a no-gi grappler, but that has been a very reliable way over the years throughout the history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Jiu-Jitsu, that when you're able to not only sweep, but pass the guard or threatening to pass the guard, there tend to be a lot of opportunities available then, and you've really got to pay attention. It just becomes a question of how are they going to turn? How are they going to post their arm? And if you're really good, then you're good, like I said, at taking away their options. You close, maybe they had four doors, maybe when they're on the bottom, they would, and you pass their guard, they would normally have four options available to them. Maybe you're so good at smothering and taking away space that now they only have one option. Well, it becomes very easy to predict, what are they going to do? Which way are they going to turn? If you're that great, like Roger Gracie, it's like, well, it becomes very predictable. He leaves you one door, and he knows at some point you're going to try to go through that one door, and he's waiting, and boom, and he's going to seize and pounce. And so when you talk about like the predictability that you're talking about, Noah, that's an incentive for people to say, why is passing the guard such a big deal, especially in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Why is it such a big deal? Because once you do it, when you don't pass the guard, they've got two arms, their head works great, their stomach muscles are working great, their legs are working great. Once you pass, it's like, well, you get past half their defenses. Their legs and their knees are gone, or if you almost pass, now they just have, they might just have their hands. So now you're getting past all these defenses, elbows, you got hands, elbows, their head, their hips, their knees, their feet. You got all these lines of defense. Well, when you almost pass or you pass, they got half the defense. You just burn through half of their defense, right? Mm-hmm. So now they're left. They got two arms. Sometimes they don't even have their elbows. They got two arms, and if their arms are here, well, then they don't have much of, they have less defense. So the opportunities tend to present themselves there. So you really want to be. Well, other thing I've been noticing lately is when I do pass guard, I need to get back to holding that position better. I've had some, I train with guys, a lot of them are 25, 30 pounds heavier than me. I usually don't go that much. I did roll with a guy who was about, I rolled in the last couple of weeks. One guy was like 230, 240. Another guy was 240. And I rolled with a guy yesterday who was probably 220, 230. For the most part, I avoid them, but every once in a while I do wind up rolling with them. But usually I'm with somebody who's within 15, 20, 25, 30 pounds of me. And one thing I'm noticing is, every once in a while, they're just trying to explode and muscle me. So I've got to get better at distributing my weight. I don't want some big guy to just throw me off of them. So there's times where I'm just like, all right, how long can you stay on top of them? So some rolls I might just be like, I want to focus on, they just don't get up from this. This is like quicksand. They just don't get up. And then other rolls, I'm intentionally letting them roll so that I can get the opportunity to submit them. I'm intentionally trying to let them, please roll, please explode, so that I'm waiting, I'm setting a trap, right? So I do both. Sometimes out there, I'm working on smothering and quicksand and making them miserable and I'll pressure them for 2 minutes before I go for a submission. And other times I'll get on top of them, and then within 15, 20 seconds, I'm going to let him roll somewhere. I'm going to let him roll. Maybe he'll turtle and I'll guillotine him, or maybe he'll do this or this, and then I'm waiting for him, right? I'm setting a trap. So I train both, because there are going to be times where you just have to hold that son of a gun down. If you never train to hold him down, to smash him and smother him, that might be the right thing to do sometimes. It might, right? I mean, especially in a 5-minute match or a 10-minute match, sometimes that's the right button. But at the other hand, if you're only always doing that, then your submissions aren't going to be as good. So you got to train both ways.
That's interesting. I haven't thought about training that way of like, let me just hold this position, and that's a form of gameplay. Let me just maintain.
You got to be skilled, especially once you get the purple belts, brown belts, black belts. Even to hold them down for 90 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you got to be skilled. A lot of people are good at getting up. You got to be skilled to hold those positions. Like once Roger Gracie mounts you, like he holds that position until the end of the match for as long as he wants, right? Like that's a tremendous skill in and of itself, just to mount that long. And so to hold side control, I'm a fan of, we've had Jordan Worth, who's our buddy, and he's been on the podcast many times, and he's a finisher. That's his mindset. I love it. I love the finisher mindset. I'm trying to up my finish rate. But I'm just saying that there is, some people, because they only train finishes, they don't know how to hold anybody down, and they don't understand the mechanics of of how do I distribute my weight? What would it take to hold this person down, to establish control, to keep control, and then, yes, eventually work to the submission. But since they don't spend much time there and they rush through it, they don't understand a lot of the finer details of weight distribution. And it's an art. I mean, it's an art. Imagine if you could just take someone down and they just can't get up. Like if there was like no time limit, there are people out there. I fought this guy Batata at a couple of Masters World Championships, and the first match he won on a ref's decision. It was a razor close match, and Batata's a former world champion. He's phenomenal. And then the next match, I just went blitzkrieg. I was like, I'm going to try to submit him. I'm going to try to, I went completely. I didn't give him any respect at the Masters World Championships. I was just like, I'm just going for broke. I'm going to try to finish him. I didn't want to go to a ref's decision because I thought they're not going to give it to me, right? So, well, in all of that, he passed my guard. And oh my goodness, that was the, Ricky Lindell. A lot of people know Ricky Lindell. The best top pressure I've ever felt for anybody within 30 pounds of me was Ricky Lindell and Batata. And then I've heard that Tanquinho out there, what Augusto Mendez, I've heard he's got, tremendous top pressure. So there's a real art to it. There's also another guy here at here in Las Vegas in Henderson. Chris and Mylene Angle, their brother, I forget his name right now. Great guy, hardly ever competes. He's about 165, 170. Oh my goodness, distributes his weight. He is a brick when he gets on you. And it's so frustrating. Like you're talking about people that like if there's no time limit, it's just hard to get up from under these guys, right? Like it's insane. And I've heard Gordo. So even Gordo's good friends with Renzo Gracie, and Batata is a Gordo black belt. And of course, Gordo is a legend. And Gordo is a good friend with Renzo Gracie, your primary instructor at the academy back in and Gordo is a master of that. Like, I pass your guard, I stay on top of you for however long I want, and you just up. It's a real form, and even if you're a finisher mindset, I think that's beautiful. I think more people should embrace the art of, what does it take to hold this person down if I wanted to? What does it take to control them? It's very hard to do, and those that do it, oh man, it's an art form. It's beautiful. I appreciate it more now than I did when I was younger.
A buddy of mine just texted me. Today we in the news, just to interrupt you outside of it, there is another Noah Green out there. 25-year-old Noah Green, who allegedly is the suspect behind the attack on the U.S. Capitol today. Not this Noah Green, but a 25-year-old Noah Green. So, yeah, from Indiana.
What happened in the U.S. Capitol? What was that?
So the reports are coming out that there's some 25-year-old man named Noah Green rammed with his car a U.S. Capitol barrier. Those metallic pop-up out of the ground. You can't drive. So I think he could have pinned some U.S. Capitol officers. But anyways, that's unfortunate. Not bringing good things to bear for our federal government. It's repeated attacks on our country and democracy.
Minutes late, perhaps we should segue to talk about Francis Ngannou. We've had Dewey Cooper on the podcast, and Dewey is one of I've interviewed Eric Nixick over the manager of Extreme Couture. Of course, I've interviewed Randy Couture many times over the last 18 years. And Francis Ngannou is the new UFC heavyweight champion. Anybody who's familiar with Francis's Ngannou, we'd love to have him on this podcast. Maybe Dewey can help us with that. But the one thing that he said, there's a meme that's circulating. It reminds me very much. I mean, I've said something to the same effect over the years about my own life. But, he was saying, look, my biggest achievement is not winning the UFC title. It is the fact that I never let my dream die in me. I had a dream, and I never let anything in life, any circumstance, any heartbreak deny me that dream. I kept dreaming. I stayed faithful to it. And, it's interesting because as I think of my own life, that hits close to home because we think that shiny metal, whatever, rings and championships and medals, we expect them to do more money. We expect it to bring more of a fulfillment than it does. We've talked about that with like Robert Drysdale on here. But there's something intangible. There's something priceless that seems to be more important, more lasting, more at the cellular level. Just leaves a bigger mark. And so, first of all, congratulations to Dewey Cooper and Eric Nixick and Francis Ngannou on that. Did you get to watch that fight? And Stipe, wow, Stipe is just wow. I mean, that guy has so much respect for just the way he carries himself. That guy's a fighter. Like when you say who are the poster boys for fighter or poster people for fighting, Stipe Miocic is up there. He's sort of the poster person for it. But did you get to see that fight, Noah?
Oh yeah, I was looking forward to it. It's funny, but UFC fights now are turning into this. It seems like I'm slowly becoming more Brazilian by the year, because I've mastered my cheese bread recipe. Although last night I had a little oops, I had a little too much milk. But before these UFC fights, I'll go to the butchers and get I'll get picanha, which is the cut of beef, and I'll my family knows it's fight night, and we're gonna do this up well, and so we'll make black beans, we'll make rice, and there's like a little party atmosphere at home now. In fact, my wife has signed off on my black bean recipe. For a Brazilian, I've been endorsed. I've been endorsed. My wife has endorsed my black beans, and I know that's just a minor ego victory. Okay, of like, yes, I can cook. Where it passes muster by a Brazilian. But I've been making cheese bread, pão de queijo, with some tasty Parmesan, and then picanha, which is I forgot what the English part where you describe it. It's like top. It's top. Yeah, I can't remember it. But anyways, I make these fights an event around the house, and now like even the little one is starting to like get into watching the fights. And so we watch the fights, and what's funny is the little one's like, when are the girls gonna fight? I want to watch the girls fight. But I'll ask her, do you want to do Jiu Jitsu? No, I don't want to get hurt. All right, no pressure. Okay. But anyways, on to your subject. I just wanted to put in that little thing, which to involve the family with UFC Fight Night. I make it kind of an event now, where we all enjoy it at some parts. I know my wife is pretty busy with her doctoral studies, so I pull her in for the main event, and we watch the main event, or at least the top fight of the card. So Ngannou versus Stipe, and this is a setup. It's been coming for a while where we can get them back in, and it happened. And obviously, Stipe did not. The results weren't in his favor this time. Ngannou's power versus Stipe. He got in those shots and knocked out Stipe. My concern that I have about that particular fight was the last hit, the last punch. I felt like the referee, and I believe that was Herb Dean. I think Herb Dean's great in what he does, and I felt like that. I don't know if he could have moved any quicker to stop that last hit on Stipe, because that last hit, whenever Stipe was flat on the ground, I don't fault Francis. He's a professional and he's in there to do his job. But I felt like if there was any way to pull back that last punch to prevent, long term CTE, that's worth. That is just I was like, wow, could the ref stop that any quicker? But anyways, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I thought that that is a concern. I mean, you see that, and obviously with a big puncher like Francis, I mean, 250 pounds of following you to the mat and crashing you, big 5-pound dumbbell hands. It's not good. And you're right. Herb Dean's one of the best, and he's great at pouncing in there. But I don't know. I'd have to rewatch it and see. Sometimes the refs, refereeing is an interesting job, because if you look at the best fights, a lot of times the referee's kind of invisible.
Yeah.
I really, for the referee, you don't know. You think of some of the great fights in history, and you don't know who the ref is, because the referees are sort of out of the picture and they're almost invisible. And in some of the fights where things go wrong, if the ref makes a mistake, then you know who the ref was. So it's like almost like the more anonymous and invisible the referee is, like the better the job they're doing. And some of the best fights have been like just these invisible, anonymous referees. So it's a hard job, but yeah, you would hope that, because again, like I've said many times, this is the only sport in the world where the referee dives in to your rescue to help you. There's no other sport where the referee is allowed to tackle the athletes.
That's true.
There's not.
Yeah.
It's the only sport in the world where we ask the referee to tackle the athletes. And, one thing I think, and I don't know if this is intentional or inadvertent, I haven't had a chance to talk to like Bob Bennett of the Athletic Commission, but I wonder if they line up like bigger referees for the bigger fighters. Because think about it, like, if you got to dive in and stop a freight train like Francis, you got like me, I'm 138, 39 pounds. And if you got to dive in and protect the fighter, but Herb Dean's, 200 and some pounds. Big John McCarthy was like 250. You've got, Mirgliata, who's a big, it does seem like you've got that sometimes for the big boys that you need a big ref. I'm not saying that that's exclusive, that you absolutely have to, but it seems like that tends to happen because you got to dive in and protect them. You got to bring a lot of force, and you got to bring it quick.
Well, I don't know. I want to ask that. I want to jump up and ask that question, because the
argument that a smaller ref would be quicker and more nimble-footed and dive in quicker.
That's right. Yeah.
And so we do see some referees, even some good ones, that have more of a lackadaisical, laid-back style, and there's that balance there of, being the ref who's out of the way and letting things develop and not being an obstruction, but also being that ref that's ready, that's on your toes and is nimble and ready to pounce, because every punch can have can be unnecessary damage that can affect this fighter for the next fight and maybe beyond. So. Yeah, you're right. I mean, but it does seem like pay attention to the big fighters. It does seem like the refs that are assigned are some big refs. I'm not saying that. I'm sure that Mario Yamasaki or somebody out there, a tiny ref, could be like the Energizer Bunny and pop in and protect the fighters. So maybe we'll see that at some point.
Well, the boxing commission officials that they bring in there, here in Vegas, they're wearing those maroon jackets. There's some big guys there, and I think those officials, the ones that swarm in after every fight, and that are there before every fight. I think those guys and women, those are the enforcers. Those are the ones that will. I don't think it's necessarily the refs that will step in and. They will stop they will officially stop the fight, but I think the big guys with the jackets on, those are your bruisers. That's that's your security, whenever things really go rough. And I feel like the ref is just, I mean, they're more technical in their approach and their knowledge, and when the situation's in their hands and they have to make those rapid decisions. I think that the heavies outside the octagon are there for that. That's my impression. I'm wrong. I'm probably wrong about that too. Um, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if our just as a side note, our podcast, just because of my name, Noah Green, is matching.
I thought that we could be trending with like
Politico. We are absolutely trending right now, and on Google searches because of my name.
That had occurred to me
yeah.
And that's not the way. Obviously, that's not the way we want to grow. We don't want to grow because of
yeah, I mean, because NBC News is reporting MSNBC suspect in Capitol Police incident is a 25-year-old Indiana man named Noah Green. May have lived in Virginia. On his Facebook page, he notes that he is a follower of the Nation of Islam. Suspect is now dead. Yeah, I think that this podcast is probably trending today, Frank, just because of my name, and obviously not the kind of publicity that I want for this show. But as I've heard many times, any publicity is good publicity. We'll take it. We'll take more followers. So I just want to say, if you're hearing our discussion today, we talk a lot about Jiu Jitsu and philosophy and fighting, the martial arts, but about life improvement and how you can use the mats to improve your life, especially through the pandemic. So it's
and again, we also talk here a lot about the power of the martial arts, specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, judo, wrestling, to unite people of different walks of life. I mean, there's so much. We're in such a divided time in our country where we're supposed to be the United States, and in many ways it seems like the divided states. And yet when you go to many Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academies, MMA academies, and you just see people of many walks and religions and political persuasions and business professionals and prison inmates and just everything in between. And you just see people bonding, and you see the camaraderie, and you see the divisions, the walls fall down, and you realize that we are bonded, that our fates are intertwined, we're entangled, and we need to work together. And it's beautiful to see, and it's a real thing. It's not just some warm, fuzzy, thing we talk about. It's a real thing. You can go out there, if you're a political person and you hate, you're on the left or you're on the right or wherever you are, and you hate the other side or whatever, you think that they're the devil. I mean, just go down to your local Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy and watch people coexist. And it's not just a facade. It's not just an act. We're doing something right with that. There is some power of Jiu-Jitsu. There is some power of the intimacy of these martial arts to get past what makes us different, to get past that and to see the humanity in that other person, and to care about them, to teach them, to have them teach us. And it's just an amazing thing to see. It's one of the best things about the mat life, about the mats that we're talking about. And I honestly think, Noah, I've said it before, I'll say it again, the people at the United Nations, the people that, head the political parties, whatever, they should just go, and they should take like a field trip, like it should be like mandatory, and just go to these martial arts academies and these Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academies or Jiu-Jitsu academies and just watch how so many people of so many different backgrounds coexist and get along and support each other and care about each other. Just go watch, and the society almost needs to start emulating. I'm not saying it's perfect. It's not like nirvana. It's not a utopia. But for some reason, we're able to do it better than almost any other ecosystem. It's phenomenal to watch. And I truly believe, I'm not joking, that our world leaders, our political leaders, the United Nations people that care about diversity training, we don't need all the laws and all the regulations. They're passing all these laws all the time to, demand diversity, whatever. It's like, we don't need all the laws and regulations. We just figure it out. We make it work, and it works better, I think. So I just invite anybody out there, political leader, whatever, diversity training, HR departments, you want to see it done well, go to your local Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or mixed martial arts academy, ask them questions, watch how they do it, and ask them, how do you do that? How are you fitting everybody in and creating this symphony, this harmony, when so many other places can't do it, and all they can do is just create more laws. And then the more laws we create, in some ways, it seems like the more divided we are. So it's like, what are we doing that maybe the rest of the world can emulate and learn from?
Hey, Frank, I want to ask you a kind of an outside question. Have you promoted anyone belt ranks? Have you had that opportunity?
Yeah, I have a couple. I've had a couple of, I've had several like blue belts and, some other, kids training, like kids to get gray belts and that sort of thing, like green belts. Yeah, I have. Yeah. Not certainly not to the extent, nowhere near the extent of like a Henzo Gracie or a Robert Drysdale or just, so many of the great instructors out there. I never knew if I was going to stay in Las Vegas. I've been here a long time. I'm from the East Coast originally, and got divorced and, worked for the UFC, worked in newspapers. I just didn't know, if I was going to stay here. So I didn't really I did try, and I had my own little academy, and I taught at some gyms, and I've taught a lot over the years. But I just didn't know how long I was going to stay. So I think that really hurt me, because I didn't know that I wanted to lay down roots. I will say that what's in my heart now, Noah, I gave a TEDx talk, Jiu Jitsu for a Better World, and it's in my heart now to really do a lot more with kids Jiu Jitsu and making it available to everyone at no cost or at minimal cost. And so that is something that I'm working on now. That's very important. I hope that that's part of my legacy. And, I certainly haven't done that near to the extent that I laid out in that TEDx talk. But it's something that's in my heart, and I need to do it, and I will do it.
I've got another question for you, follow up on that. Can you describe the kids' belts and what they're like? I know, having trained in Jits for so long, what the adult belts are. What are the kids' belts? And I've seen them, and when I'm at Henzo's and I see the kids' class, and I'm like, I don't understand it. So maybe if you could break down. Do you know off the top of your head the kids' belt ranking system?
Yeah, you got the white belt, you got the gray belt, you got the the orange belt, the green belt, and then I think I don't know if IBJJF has changed this in the last couple of years, but you got to be 16 usually to get the blue belt. So you could be a green belt, and then you could go and get your if you're 16, if you're a green belt at 15, and then you turn 16, you could get we'd make you a blue belt. I think there's even restrictions. If you go through the IBJJF Federation, which is the most popular and probably the most legitimate, I think there's restrictions on when you can give a black belt. It might be 18 or 19. I mean, it's hard to find a legit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt who's, 18 years old. I've seen some, Ricky Lindell was 19. I've seen a few of those. It's harder, but, who knows? I mean, you've got other people out there, Jiu-Jitsu like 10th Planet's very legit. I don't know what their policy is on, can you give a black belt to a 17-year-old? Or I don't know. I'm sure there'll be, there's undoubtedly and unquestionably 16 and 17-year-old kids out there that can tap black belts. I mean, look at someone like Nicky Ryan when he was 15 and then tap black. There's just no question that there's 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds out there whether it be in Brazil, the United States, tap black belts, right? And so if they're tapping a lot of them and they're tapping good black belt, at what point do you say, well, gosh, we got to give them a black belt? Oh, but they're only 17, So there have been some of these age, and I think the belt system, the belt system is one of the smartest things the martial arts ever did. Wrestling doesn't have it. I mean, I could say now I'm by no means now. I think once upon a time, me with a fresh leg, I've been a problem for a lot of people in wrestling around my size. Me with a fresh leg, I was a problem. I'm not saying I was the greatest, but I was going to be a problem. Me with a fresh leg without the big major surgery, I'd have been a problem for a lot of people in wrestling in my younger days. But that's come and gone. I'm nowhere near the caliber of wrestler. I mean, it's diminished a lot. Things happen, but I wish I could say I was a black belt in wrestling. I put the time on the mat at least. I don't have the skills that some kids have now, but I've certainly put the time in. But there's no belt system, and I think that's something that's hurt wrestling over the years. Is they just never had a belt system. You would just say, well, I was a Division I athlete, or I was a high school state champion, or you were this or that. But a belt system really does, on a commercial level, it does incentivize people. People like the idea of the occasional reward, the occasional acknowledgement of the feeling that I'm making progress. So
yeah,
for kids, you give a kid a stripe, okay, on their white belt. I mean, they light up. It's the biggest thing ever. You see kids get one stripe or another stripe on their white belt or their gray belt. It's magical how the kids feel. It's so, it's awesome when you see it with adults. But when you see kids get that, they really, it means so much to them. So it's a beautiful day whenever the kids put the work in and the parents are there and the parents take a picture and they take them out to eat and they make an event of it. You were talking about making it. It's an amazing thing for kids. Kids need that they have to earn it, but they need that continued reward of, oh my gosh, you got a strike today. And that makes such a powerful impact on their brain. And it kind of gives them, I always say about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for kids, nobody really talks about this. I mean, everybody says Jiu-Jitsu is so great. Kelly Slater talks about it. Joe Rogan talks about it. Jocko Willink, everybody talks about it. And they're right. It's fantastic. I've been saying that since 2002, 2003. Right? I've been training since 2001 Jiu-Jitsu. Before everybody else knew it, we were doing it. But I think the one thing that very few talk about that Jiu-Jitsu does for the kids, in addition, yes, it builds confidence. They make friends. It helps the kids that are ADD or have whatever developmental things that helps them focus because they have to focus. So that's all great. It makes people want to eat healthier and live healthier. But the other thing that it does that's so huge is Jiu-Jitsu teaches the kids to think 5-10 steps ahead without, a lot of times that concept of playing chess or speed chess is very hard for kids. Kids are only think a lot of times, right? Kids have a problem processing, cause and effect, consequences. We see that with criminal deviants and juveniles and people that, 14, 15-year-old kids, tons of them that shoot people, kill people. They just don't have any idea of what they're really doing a lot of times, right? They don't know. They don't think about the consequence. They don't think about what would it be like to spend 20 years in jail. They just don't have the concept, right? But jiu-jitsu teaches kids to think, whether they know it or not, consciously or unconsciously, they are learning to think 3 steps ahead, 5 steps, some of them 10 steps ahead. We're teaching them critical thinking. We're teaching them to connect the dots, to put the pieces together. That's the amazing thing. And they don't even know it. So we're raising better thinkers, better problem solvers. It's just a natural byproduct of putting them on the mat. So it's not just a physical thing. It's not just a confidence thing. It's not just my kid is so hyper. Let me run them a little bit and get all that hyper energy out of them. They'll be better behaved. It's not just an anti-bully thing. All those things, all those boxes get checked. Then the kid gets the reward system. The kid learns, when I work hard, I get reward. I get the stripe. I get the belt. They learn that too. But as one of the real gold mines that nobody talks about is you teach them to think ahead. And that's a big thing. And that's hard to do with a lot of kids. It's hard to get them but jiu-jitsu teaches you to think in advance, down the road, plan to like you were saying, pattern recognition.
Yep.
They might not know it. If I was to talk about, hey kids, we're teaching you chess and speech, huh? What? They don't know. But when you watch them, you're like, wow, they're getting it. They're learning it. It will have an effect. So yeah, don't sign your kids up for pursuing jiu-jitsu or jiu-jitsu. It's an incredible thing. I'm glad to see the world catching up because I saw it many years ago, and it's beautiful to see the world catching up to that. So
Yeah, I like what I read about something about how to get your kids to look at the value of the video games that they're playing is to get them to talk about the video game they're playing. But imagine just the volume of discussion you can have with them if you go over there, you take them to watch them do to practice the art on the mats with other kids, and go through that process of building up. It's the opposite of instant gratification because it takes time to develop those skills on the mat, and then to go out and to have that ability to celebrate their progress with them. Frank, you said about the kids, like you said, the kids, for the kids, they get all that excitement about getting that first stripe or when they get a stripe. I got to tell you, um, I had a lot of excitement when I was a white belt at Henzo's in the grinder, and I got my first stripe. Well, actually, when I got my third and fourth stripes, because what happened was I'd started training at Henzo's, and then off and on and off and on, and that's just how it is. But if you never let it go, you just keep going back to it. But then I'd gone and lived in Brazil for a while and come back, and I'd placed a medal there, and I was in Houston, and I had a coach there, Darren McCall, who's now with Brazilian top team, I believe, syndicate. As far as schools, he has one there in Atascocita, Texas, and he gave me two stripes based upon my progress and what I'd done in Brazil. But when I got back to New York, and I got that third stripe, and I got a fourth stripe, Rafael Sapo Natal gave me that fourth stripe. I'm telling you what, it just feels so good to, I felt all that effort, and then to get that blue belt. And now my blue belt currently needs, I need to put some sweat in it. I'm where I'm at right now. I need to put some sweat on that belt so I can move it forward. But in the past year, we've done so much of off the mat training in the head about the sport itself. I'm ready to get back on the mats. I am. I also wanted to mention to you today before we finish up. You mentioned, about going over seeing Robert Drysdale and training with him. I had the opportunity to get his book, and I haven't seen the video that this is based on.
Not done yet. I guess it's still being edited. The final.
Oh, is. Oh, but I got this book, and I can't wait to dive into it. It's let me see how many pages it is. He's got some recommended reading in it. It's 400 page. It's a 400-page book, soft cover, and I can't wait to get into it and read some of the stories, because this is the history of the sport. These are the roots, and I've crossed paths when I was in Brazil 10 years ago. I crossed paths with a few of these guys. These are legends, and you go walk down parts of Rio, you will bump into these guys. You'll just bump into them. They're everywhere. The greats of the sport. I ran into Big Nog Noguera just walking back from the beach one day. How often does that happen? You walk past a UFC superstar, and that's all in Brazil. But obviously, we got to wait a little while for to get to the international travel for this pandemic. So, anyways, I've got that book that I'm going to consume here in the next few weeks and grind through it. I'm going to ask your coach, Robert Drysdale, some questions. I'm going to mark it up. Get information. Hey, we're already at time, Frank. I just realized that as I'm kind of mumbling to myself here, but it's good to get back in front of the camera with you. I've got on my University of Houston shirt because my fellow Cougs are they're in the Final Four of the NCAA men's basketball tournament. So I'm looking forward to see their gameplay against a school up the road in Waco, Baylor. So I think that's Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I saw that the UFC, the UFC in Houston. I think it's May, middle of May. It's headlined by Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler, and then I think in the co-main with Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards, I think it just sold out in minutes. 17,000 or so is what the report that I saw. So it's amazing. Final thing I wanted to say, so yeah, shout out to Robert Drysdale, authored Closed Guard, gave my black belt, trained there a lot. Also, you just said something that's important. I want to end it on that, is that, with the belt system and with the stripes and being, when the instructor calls your name and says, and gives you the stripe, calls you the front of the class and gives you the stripe, that next belt that you've earned. One of the amazing things about it is, there's all different levels of jiu-jitsu. Some people are phenoms, they're world champions. And then most people who get those belts and stripes are not the best of the best. They're not elite. And sometimes I dare say most of the students feel like they're not progressing because they lose in class a lot. They're facing the better students. They're rolling with the elite students, and they're feeling like, oh my God, I'm not getting better. I'm, getting worse. But the belt and the stripes remind you that you can be progressing even when you feel like you're not progressing. Sometimes you are progressing. You feel like you're not, but you're progressing. When Francis Ngannou, to tie this to the beginning, when Francis Ngannou left Cameroon and escaped and fled, and then he was going to other countries, neighboring countries, and then they were catching him. The guards, basically the guards in the military in these other countries, these neighboring countries, were catching him, and then they were robbing him. They were taking his money and then throwing him back, right? And then he would come back and he'd try to sneak in again, and flee. He's fleeing. He's trying to sneak into other countries again, and they're catching him and they're robbing him again, taking all his money, and he's trying to hide the money in different places, in different cavities of the body, and then they're catching him and throwing him. I think he did that eight times. He's back and forth before he finally, finds a way to, again, to sneak in and change his life. But, and then he's homeless, and then all these things. But that might not seem like progress, but you look at where he is now and you say every step before that, even when it seemed like he was going backwards, it was progress. He was progressing. He was growing. He was growing his fight. He was growing his muscles. He was growing his persistence. He was growing his tenacity. He was growing his determination. He was growing his dream. He was building branches to things that, a harvest that you don't see, but a harvest, these branches are happening. These seeds are being planted, but you don't see where's the fruit? I've been planting the seeds. I've been watering it. The branches have been there. Where's the fruit? But a lot of times you don't feel like the fruit's going to come. But when you're in there doing the work and you get that stripe and you get that belt, you realize, I was progressing the whole time. Yeah. You're progressing. Even when you don't, that's the problem. That defeats a lot of people. They feel like they're not progressing, they quit. And the lesson there is, a lot of times you are progressing just by you showing up, just by you having a good attitude, just by you doing that, just by you making a committed decision, you're progressing. You're ahead of all the people that stayed at home when they're on the couch and they're not doing it. And they're thinking about doing it, but they're not doing it. You're making a lot of progress. So it's hard sometimes to realize you're making the progress. But when your intentions are good, when they're pure, when you keep showing up, when you're determined, you surround yourself with good people, a good family, a good tribe, like you say. Some days you'll feel like, man, I'm going backwards. Most of the time, you're progressing. And that stripe and that belt is a reminder, man, you're doing good. You're progressing. So that's the reminder. Noah, it's a pleasure. I hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you again in a couple of days. We're going to have we're hoping we have our special guest there. We'll keep our fingers crossed. We won't jinx ourselves by saying that, but it's been a pleasure here on a Friday afternoon. A lot of good stuff. I wish you well the rest of the weekend. I'll see you again on Sunday, my friend.
Sounds great. I appreciate the stories and your time, Frank. It's always a pleasure. And so let's just snap back into our regular time slot, which is 4 p.m. No, correction. Make that 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 Pacific in the afternoons. We go live on this show, and on Sundays, absolutely. And you and I always have we either have guests or we have interesting topics. So until then, I bid you well. Take care, sir.